Hey, today I am going to talk about space and CSGO and what it means. And I think space is an important thing to talk about just because it's a way a player can impact a round or an entire game without necessarily showing up on the scoreboard in terms of kills or assists or whatever. And basically, what space is in my opinion, the fundamental thing about Counter Strike, which is hitting your shot. And the whole point about hitting your shot is that you can actually create your shot, and I think that's a part that's kind of misunderstood about Counter Strike, at least from a casual perspective, where people think it's more about aim than it is about the team play, the decision making, and all that. Because in my opinion, it's much easier to hit a shot when you're right behind the guy and you have plenty of time to line up and spray down or line up a headshot and kill him if he's not moving, right? Compared to a very hard like jiggle peek and then you have to hit the op, but if you miss the op shot, then they could come out and immediately kill you. Like those are like two very extreme spectrums of like an easy shot and a hard shot, so to speak. Or like there are some cases where we've seen where like an incredibly hard shot would be like Shocks in that selfless pistol moment, like the famous like ace where basically he has planted the bomb on the A site of cash, and then the entire selfless team like surrounds him, and then he has to basically do like a 360-degree like five headshots in a row in order to win that round. And that's like a very hard thing to do. Very few players could have done that. Actually, I think there's only like you can count them on one hand, the guys you could think maybe could do that, but even then, it's a very unlikely scenario. So, yes, aim is very important, if but the way teams play, it's much more important just to make easy shots for everybody to so that you can lower down the variance on how much skill you need to win, and that's, in my opinion, the fundamentals of Counter Strike, or one of them. And a basic way to think about it is crosshair placement, because with crosshair placement, or like a basically with crosshair placement, you always want, whenever you turn a corner, you always want your crosshair to be right on the guy's head, right? Like you can watch any Launder's video; he always does a great job talking about crosshair placement. And when you look at that, basically there's zero space between your crosshair placement and their head, and so you just click, and that's it. You're done. Like you don't actually have to do any kind of crazy flick over. You don't have that weird suspenseful moment when you realize he's there and you're there, and then your like crosshairs go onto each other. And so that's a very important like key aspect to creating an e-shot, creating aim, and fucking up that crosshair placement is what space creation is all about. So for instance, you could have a great crosshair placement, but you can't have it on two places at once, and that's basically how CT side like holds are made usually, when you're actually going into the site, not when you're like trying to make a pick or anything like that. So basically, if there's only one player left and he goes into like let me think, what is a good example, like uh the B the B site of Inferno. One guy is an emo, the other guy is like sets a crosshair with him from like CT spawn. Basically, you're not getting anywhere if you're the T player and you don't have any utility, because you cannot literally create like a 180-degree angle to kill both of them, because once you make contact with one of them, the other guy will come out and trade you, and you can't kill both of them that fast. So that is just by positioning space created without having to actually have done anything, because both CT side players will have created an easy shot for the other guy once the T side player comes into the site. And let's see, what was I thinking? But basically, the T side player can also create space using utility. For instance, if he had a smoke, he could smoke off the guy from C spawn, or if he had like a molly, he can molly the guy towards inside, and then you could kill him that way, because then you force him out on the angle, and then you create an easy shot of your own, so to speak. And that's another form of space creation. And so, because it's a 5v5 team game, there are going to be a lot of times where you might have to sacrifice the player going in, so to speak, in order to create this space, in order to create this chaos, so that it's very hard for the players that are defending the site to get their crosshairs right and to know what's going on. And so this happened a lot with the old SK lineup, where they had Taco as a sacrificial entry, where they would flash him like 2 or 3 times at the same time as he was like jumping around like crazy, and like just running in, creating a bunch of space, so that when the rest of the players came in, they had much easier shots and much more information as to what was going on. So this also goes into like just general spacing, because if for the T side, you don't want your players so close that the CT side can get a collateral kill, but you don't want them so far away that you can't trade the kill before they run away from the spot and make another angle for you to have to deal with. And that's kind of how I think about space creation. There's other examples, obviously, like flashes. Obviously, you can't. They will force a player away from an area. That's generally how they're mostly used. Or a very basic one is like the jump bait for an opper. Like Apex will always do this for Kenny S, for instance, where if he knows an opper is down Ivy on the T side, if the two of them know there's an opper down Ivy on the T side, on the CT side of train, Apex will jump, draw the crosshair of the op, and then Kenny S will peek in, kill the op. That's kind of how, that's like a very basic way of thinking about it, because basically he's forced the crosshair away from where Kenny S is about to appear. And there's also other ways to think about it. Like this is basically what the lurk roll is creating space without, as another form of creating space. And you kind of see this in, there was a game at Starladder Kiev. I think it was, let me check, G2 versus Mouse on Inferno. There's like a 3v2 situation, and Apex is stuck in, I think, pit. Like he already got 2 good entries, but at this point, like it seems pretty clear that G2 is about to lose, just in terms of manpower, because the CT players at B were rotating. But Shox makes this great move where he goes towards arch side, gets a kill, and all of a sudden the player who is stalling out in the site, I think this was like a 2v4 or something. It now becomes 2v3 with Shox getting the guy at arch and then 2B players coming over. But because Shox killed that guy at arch, the guy in sight, the last defender left, he has to think about 2 angles where it can come, the aggression can come from, and he knows G2 has to attack before the CT rotators come, but he doesn't know where to look necessarily because he's in a bad spot, because if he tries to switch position, Apex will get him. If he stays there, Shox will get him. And so because of like the mental space and the pressure created by Shox, Apex can get him. And that's kind of a great example of, that is a great example of space creating. So even though Shox got 1 kill, there's essentially 2 kills and a bomb plant because they played it out correctly. And there's other examples, like the op is great. Was always a great weapon just for getting information, controlling long distances, stuff like this. And this is just, I think this is enough. This is just a basic overview of what space is, what people mean when they talk about space, and why it's like an intangible effect in CS:GO, because it's not, you can see it in the server, you can see it in the game, but it's not going to show up on the scoreboard. So I just thought I'd talk about it because I think it's a very important concept to talk about when you're talking about any team in the game. All right, see you guys later.